Disclaimer: this is a fictional dramatization created for artistic, emotional, and educational storytelling purposes. All characters and events are entirely fictional and created using AI tools. No impersonation, misrepresentation, or harm is intended. The content contains scenes of danger involving child characters. However, no real persons or minors were involved in its production. Grace's Love Stories produces scripted, AI-generated stories that promote, entertain, inspire kindness, and emotional connection. We respect our viewers and strictly adhere to YouTube's policies.
The scent of autumn crept through the narrow window of my tower room, carrying memories I tried desperately to forget. Fallen leaves and distant bonfires. Freedom's perfume. I pressed my face against the cold stone, breathing deeply, letting the crisp air fill my lungs while my fingers traced the familiar grooves worn into the windowsill over a decade of confinement. 10 years. 10 years since they declared me defective. An omega whose scent was too potent, too dangerous to be among the pack. Below, the annual Equinox Festival had begun. Laughter floated upward, mingling with music that made my heart ache with longing. Drums pounded in rhythm with the dancing feet I couldn't see but could perfectly imagine. The ceremony would begin at midnight, when new pack bonds would form and mates would be chosen. A celebration I'd witnessed 9 times from this lonely perch. Always watching, never participating. "Your dinner, Miss Eleanor," said Agnes, my elderly caretaker, as she pushed open the heavy wooden door. Her kind eyes crinkled at the corners, the only warmth in my isolated existence. She placed the tray on my small table, the same ritual we'd shared for a decade. "Extra bread tonight," she whispered with a conspiratorial wink. "Thank you," I murmured, my voice soft from disuse. Few people spoke to me besides Agnes. The guards changed shifts outside my door in silence, as if my abnormality might be contagious through conversation. Agnes lingered, fidgeting with her apron, unusual behavior for someone typically efficient in her duties. "There's news," she finally said, glancing nervously at the door. "The Alpha King has returned from the Northern Territories." My pulse quickened. King Nathaniel's triumphant return from war had been expected, but not so soon. I'd heard whispers from Agnes about his ruthlessness in battle, his tactical brilliance that had finally ended the centuries-old conflict with the northern packs. Now he would preside over tonight's equinox ceremony. "The whole kingdom is in a frenzy," Agnes continued. "They say he's different now. Something happened to him in the north." Her voice trailed off as footsteps echoed in the hallway. Before departing, she pressed something cool and metallic into my palm. "My mother's locket," she whispered. "For protection. She always said it guided her through dark times." The silver pendant was tarnished with age, engraved with a crescent moon encircling a small wolf. "Keep it hidden." The door closed behind her with its familiar heavy thud, but the locket burned against my skin like a promise. The first gift I'd received in years. I clutched it tightly, this small token of kindness becoming instantly precious. I moved to my window again, watching as torches illuminated the courtyard. The traditional bonfires would soon be lit, signaling the start of the choosing ceremony. A ceremony that had once meant everything to me, before I was declared dangerous and locked away on my 16th birthday, when my first heat revealed the potency of my scent, strong enough, they claimed, to drive alphas to madness and violence. The memory still cut deep, Elder Thaddeus pointing a gnarled finger at me as I trembled before the council. "Her scent will cause bloodshed among our strongest alphas. For the safety of the pack, she must be separated." My parents had lowered their eyes in shame, accepting the verdict without protest. Only my younger brother had cried, reaching for me as guards led me away to the stone prison. A sudden commotion below drew my attention. The crowd parted like waves before a ship, and I caught my first glimpse of King Nathaniel. Even from my height, his presence commanded attention. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with predatory grace, his dark hair gleaming in the torchlight. Guards flanked him, but they seemed unnecessary. No one would dare challenge him. As if sensing my observation, he stopped. His head tilted upward, face turning toward my tower. My heart stuttered painfully. Impossible. No one could detect me from such a distance. Yet he remained frozen, staring up at my window for long, excruciating seconds. I retreated into the shadows, pulse hammering against my ribs. Just coincidence, I told myself. He couldn't possibly know I existed. That night, I couldn't sleep. The drums continued long past midnight, the celebration reaching its peak as new mates were bound by ancient rites. I lay awake, Agnes's locket clutched in my fingers, tracing its engraved patterns and wondering how different my life might have been. Dawn arrived with unusual sounds. Raised voices, hurried footsteps outside my door. I dressed quickly, anxiety tightening my chest. Change was never good for someone in my position. The door burst open without warning. Not Agnes, but Captain Orloff, head of the Royal Guard. A man I'd seen but never spoken to during my confinement. "You're to come with me," he stated flatly, his expression unreadable. "Why? Where's Agnes?" My voice cracked from fear. "The king has requested your presence." His eyes wouldn't meet mine. The king. My mind reeled. After 10 years of invisibility, why would King Nathaniel even know I existed, much less summon me? 2 guards flanked me as we descended the spiral staircase I hadn't used in a decade. Each step felt foreign, my legs weak from years of limited movement. The vastness of the hallways disoriented me after so long in confined quarters. Servants stopped to stare as we passed, their expressions ranging from curiosity to fear to pity. We entered the throne room through a side entrance. The morning sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the marble floor. The space seemed cavernous after my small room, making me feel exposed and vulnerable. He sat on the ancient throne, larger than life, King Nathaniel. A scar ran from his temple to his jaw, fresh enough to still be pink against his tanned skin. A souvenir from the Northern War. His dark eyes landed on me with unsettling intensity. "Leave us," he commanded, his deep voice resonating through the empty hall. The guards hesitated. "Your Majesty," Captain Orloff began, "the council advised that—" "Leave. Us." Each word fell like a stone. They withdrew reluctantly, and suddenly I stood alone before the most powerful alpha in the kingdom, painfully aware of my simple dress and tangled hair. I kept my eyes downcast, remembering the protocols I'd been taught as a child. An Omega never meets an Alpha's gaze directly. Footsteps echoed as he descended from the dais. I remained frozen, heart threatening to burst from my chest. He circled me slowly, his scent enveloping me, pine forests after rain, wood smoke, and something uniquely his own, an Alpha's scent, powerful enough to make my knees weaken. "Look at me," he commanded. I hesitated, years of conditioning warring with his direct order. I said, "Look at me, Eleanor." The use of my name startled me enough that I raised my eyes to his. The intensity of his gaze stole my breath. This close, I could see flecks of amber in his dark irises, the shadow of beard along his jaw, the slight asymmetry of his features that somehow made him more striking rather than less. 10 years, he said, his voice quieter now. "They've kept you hidden for 10 years. Confusion must have shown on my face because his expression hardened. "You don't understand yet, do you?" He reached toward me, and I flinched involuntarily. He paused, then more carefully extended his hand to lift a strand of my pale hair. "Your scent called to me from the battlefield. 300 miles away, and still I could sense you." My mind struggled to comprehend his words. It wasn't possible. "The elders lied," he continued, dropping his hand. "They didn't lock you away to protect the pack from chaos. They hid you because they feared what you are." What am I?" My voice emerged as barely a whisper. His eyes burned into mine. "The true Luna, my mate." The world tilted beneath me. I stumbled backward, and his hand shot out to steady me, his touch sending electric currents through my arm. "That's not possible," I whispered. "I'm defective. Dangerous." A low growl rumbled in his chest. "You are neither of those things. You are rare. A true Omega. The firstborn in generations." His jaw tightened, and the council knew exactly what that meant. Before I could respond, the doors of the throne room crashed open. Elder Thaddeus entered, flanked by council members and guards. His ancient face contorted with fury when he saw the king's hand still gripping my arm. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice dripping with false deference. "I see you've discovered our burden. Rest assured, we've kept her contained for the safety of all. Her unusual condition." Silence. King Nathaniel's command cut through the room like a blade. "You've lied to me, to my father before me, and to the entire kingdom." Elder Thaddeus paled. "My king, you're not thinking clearly. Her scent is affecting your judgment, just as we feared." "Her scent," Nathaniel interrupted, "is calling to me because she is my true mate, as you well knew she would be to the rightful king. That is why you hid her away before I returned from my training 10 years ago. Before I could find her." Whispers erupted among the council members. I stood frozen, clutching Agnes's locket through the fabric of my dress, my mind spinning with revelations I couldn't fully grasp. "The prophecy," someone murmured. "Impossible," hissed another. Nathaniel's hand moved to the small of my back, the heat of his palm searing through my thin dress. "The true Omega shall bring balance to the kingdom, when bonded with the warrior king," he recited, his eyes never leaving Elder Thaddeus's face. "That prophecy wasn't forgotten, Elder. It was deliberately suppressed." Elder Thaddeus straightened his stooped shoulders. "For good reason. The last true Omega brought war and devastation before your grandfather's time. We sought only to protect, you sought to maintain your power." Nathaniel cut in. "A true Alpha and true Omega pairing would shift the balance. You couldn't control that." I found my voice at last. "I don't understand. What does this mean?" All eyes turned to me, and I fought the urge to shrink under their scrutiny. The locket seemed to pulse against my skin, giving me courage I didn't know I possessed. Nathaniel's expression softened fractionally when he looked at me. "It means, Eleanor, that everything changes today." A heartbeat of silence followed the king's declaration, before chaos erupted in the throne room. Council members shouted over one another. Guards shifted uneasily, and through it all, King Nathaniel remained a steady presence beside me, his hand still at the small of my back, anchoring me in the storm. "Enough!" His voice cut through the clamor, and silence fell immediately. "The council will convene in 1 hour to discuss this matter fully. Until then, Eleanor will be moved to appropriate quarters befitting her status." Elder Thaddeus stepped forward, his papery hands trembling with either age or rage. "Your Majesty, I strongly advise against this. The girl has been isolated for a decade. The stimulation alone could trigger. Are you questioning my ability to control myself around my own mate, Elder?" The dangerous edge in Nathaniel's voice made even me shiver. The Elder's mouth snapped shut, though his eyes burned with unspoken arguments. "Lady Agnes," Nathaniel called, and to my surprise, my caretaker emerged from a side door. She curtsied deeply, though I noted she didn't seem startled by the proceedings. "Please escort Eleanor to the East Wing chambers and see that she has everything she needs." Agnes's familiar presence was a balm to my frayed nerves. As she approached, I noticed her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You knew," I whispered when she reached my side. It wasn't a question. She squeezed my hand gently. "Not everything, my dear, but enough to keep faith." As Agnes led me from the throne room, I felt Nathaniel's eyes following me. At the doorway, I dared to glance back. The intensity of his gaze sent heat rushing through my body, a sensation both foreign and somehow deeply familiar, as though my blood recognized what my mind still struggled to accept. The East Wing was a revelation after years in my tower cell. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating spacious rooms decorated in blues and silvers. A private bathing chamber adjoined the bedroom, with a copper tub large enough to fully submerge in. A luxury I'd been denied for years, making do with only basin baths. "This was the Queen's suite," Agnes explained as she opened heavy damask curtains. "No one has used it since the King's mother passed." I stood in the center of the room, overwhelmed. "Agnes, what's happening? Everything is changing so quickly, and I don't understand any of it." The elderly woman sighed, gesturing for me to sit on a velvet-cushioned window seat. She lowered herself beside me, her joints creaking softly. "There are things about our kind that have been kept secret, Eleanor. Sacred knowledge, passed through generations of caretakers like myself. She patted the pocket where I knew she kept her herbal remedies. My grandmother tended a true Omega long ago. What makes a true Omega different? I asked, clutching the locket she'd given me, which now felt more significant than a simple gift. Balance, she said simply. Where alphas bring strength and dominance, true Omegas bring harmony and healing. It's said they can calm even the most volatile alpha rage, sense emotions others cannot. And when bonded with their true mate, she hesitated. The pair becomes something greater than either alone. And the council feared this? Power rarely welcomes change, my dear. Agnes's weathered face creased with old anger. After the last true Omega died without an heir, the council took control. They've ruled through puppet kings for generations. Strong alphas, yes, but not true leaders. Until Nathaniel, I murmured. Agnes nodded. He was different from the start, too strong-willed, too independent. They sent him to war, hoping he wouldn't return. Instead, he came back stronger, and somehow he sensed you despite all their precautions. A soft knock interrupted us. Servants entered bearing trays of food, fresh clothing, and steaming water for the bath. I stood awkwardly as they bustled around, unused to being attended after years of solitude. When we were alone again, Agnes guided me to the bath. You'll meet with the king and council soon. Let's make you look the part of what you truly are. The warm water was heaven against my skin. Agnes washed my hair with scented oils, her gnarled fingers gentle against my scalp. As she worked, she hummed an old melody, a pack song I remembered from childhood, about the moon finding her lost wolf. The locket you gave me, I said as she helped me from the bath. It's not just a trinket, is it? Agnes smiled mysteriously. It belonged to the last true Omega. I've been its keeper, waiting for the right moment. She wrapped me in soft towels. It's yours by right. Dressed in a gown of pale blue silk, the first fine garment I'd worn in a decade, I hardly recognized my reflection. My pale blonde hair fell in waves past my shoulders, and the simple silver circlet Agnes placed on my head transformed me from prisoner to something else entirely. Remember who you are, Agnes said, adjusting the circlet. No matter what happens in that council chamber. The problem was, I no longer knew who I was. The defective Omega, the king's supposed true mate, a figure of prophecy. All seemed equally impossible for the girl who had spent a third of her life staring at stone walls. Captain Orloff arrived to escort me to the council chambers. His demeanor had changed dramatically. Gone was the brusque indifference, replaced with a respectful deference that made me even more uncomfortable. You look well, my lady, he said with a formal bow. I'm not a lady, I replied automatically. A hint of a smile touched his stern face. We shall see what the council decides. The council chamber was ancient, its round table carved from a single massive oak tree centuries ago. 13 high-backed chairs surrounded it, 12 for council members, and 1 larger throne for the king. When I entered, all conversation ceased, and 13 pairs of eyes turned to assess me. King Nathaniel rose immediately. In the hours since our first meeting, he had changed into formal attire, a midnight blue tunic embroidered with silver, the royal crest emblazoned across his chest. The crown on his head seemed almost an afterthought compared to the natural authority he exuded. Eleanor, he said, and just my name in his voice sent shivers across my skin. He gestured to an empty chair that had been placed at his right hand. Please join us. Elder Thaddeus's face mottled with indignation. This is unprecedented. An unmated Omega has never sat at this table. Many unprecedented things are happening today, Elder, Nathaniel replied coolly. Best become accustomed to change. Hesitantly, I took the offered seat, keenly aware of the council's scrutiny. Some faces showed open hostility, others calculation, and a few, the younger members, curiosity. Now, Nathaniel began, let us speak plainly. For generations, this council has suppressed knowledge of true Omegas and the prophecy concerning the restoration of true leadership to our kingdom. You hid Eleanor away when her nature revealed itself, and you kept her existence from me deliberately. We acted for the greater good, Elder Thaddeus insisted. The kingdom has enjoyed peace under council governance. Peace? Nathaniel's laugh held no humor. We've had a decade of war with the northern Pax. Our borders are threatened on all sides. The common people struggle while council families prosper. You call that peace? Lady Victoria, one of the few female council members, leaned forward. Her silver hair was pulled into a severe knot, her eyes sharp as she studied me. If she truly is what you claim, Your Majesty, there are tests, ancient protocols to verify a true Omega. I'm familiar with the protocols, Nathaniel replied. They will be observed properly, and if she fails? Elder Thaddeus challenged. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. She won't. I found my voice at last. Don't I have any say in this? The table fell silent again, shock evident on several faces at my audacity to speak without being addressed first. Nathaniel turned to me, his expression softening fractionally. Of course you do. What would you like to know? I straightened in my chair, drawing strength from the weight of Agnes's locket against my collarbone. What exactly are these tests? And what happens to me if I pass or fail? Lady Victoria answered before the king could. The trials are threefold: mind, spirit, and body. They will reveal whether you truly possess the gifts of a true Omega. And if I refuse to participate? The question slipped out before I could reconsider. Elder Thaddeus smiled thinly. Then you return to your tower, girl. Your anomalous scent is too disruptive otherwise. That's not your decision to make, Nathaniel growled. With respect, Your Majesty, said Lord Blackwell, a middle-aged council member who had remained silent until now. If she refuses the trials, it suggests she herself doubts her nature. The law is clear about dangerous Omegas. Nathaniel's hand came down hard on the table, making several members flinch. The law was perverted by this council to imprison an innocent girl for a decade. I'll do it, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. All eyes turned to me again. I'll take the trials. Not because you demand it, I added, looking directly at Elder Thaddeus, but because I want to know the truth about myself. A hint of pride flashed across Nathaniel's face before his expression returned to its regal mask. Then it's decided. The trials will commence tomorrow at dawn. So soon? Lady Victoria frowned. Traditionally, there is a preparation period of 7 days. She's been waiting 10 years, Nathaniel replied flatly. I won't have her wait longer because of council procedures. The meeting continued with discussions of preparations, ancient texts that needed consulting, and arguments about who would observe the trials. Throughout it all, I remained silent, observing the political currents swirling around me. These people had decided my fate once before without my input. I wouldn't allow it to happen again. As the council session ended, Nathaniel requested I remain behind. When the heavy doors closed, leaving us alone in the cavernous chamber, he seemed to exhale for the first time, some of the rigid formality leaving his posture. I apologize for all of this, he said, surprising me. It's not how I imagined our first meeting. You imagined meeting me? The concept seemed impossible. He moved to the window, gazing out at the kingdom spread below the castle. For months, I've been haunted by a scent I couldn't place. It grew stronger as I returned home from the north. He turned to face me. Last night, during the equinox ceremony, it nearly drove me mad. I followed it to your tower. Why would my scent reach you and no other alpha? I asked, genuinely confused. His expression intensified. Because we're true mates, Eleanor, soul-bonded before we ever met. I shook my head, struggling to accept such a mystical explanation. I don't understand how any of this works. Everything I was taught about our kind seems to be a lie. Not everything, he said, moving closer, but much was hidden from both of us. His proximity made my pulse quicken, my Omega instincts responding to his alpha presence in ways I'd never experienced during my isolation. I took an involuntary step backward, and he immediately stopped. I won't force anything upon you, he said quietly, despite what the council may think. I'm not a slave to instinct. What happens if I pass these trials? I asked, voicing my greatest fear. What will be expected of me? Traditionally, he said carefully, a true Omega would stand as Luna beside the king. But traditions can change. He held my gaze steadily. I want you free, Eleanor, free to make your own choices after so many were taken from you. Something in his words rang true, easing the tightness in my chest. And if the trials prove I'm nothing special after all, just an omega with an unusually strong scent? A shadow crossed his face. Then I'll still ensure you never see the inside of that tower again. Before I could respond, a commotion outside the chamber doors caught our attention. They burst open to reveal my brother, Sebastian, now a grown man of 25. I barely recognized him. The gangly boy transformed into a broad-shouldered alpha with our father's features, but our mother's kind eyes. "Ellie?" he breathed, staring at me in disbelief. "Sebastian," I whispered, my heart constricting with emotion. He crossed the room in long strides and pulled me into an embrace so tight it nearly crushed me. I didn't care. After 10 years of minimal human contact, my brother's familiar scent, cinnamon and cedar, brought tears to my eyes. "I thought I'd never see you again," he said, his voice thick. "They told us it was forbidden to visit, that it would only make your condition worse." Over his shoulder, I saw King Nathaniel watching us, his expression unreadable. Another piece of my past reclaimed. Another step away from the isolated existence I'd known for so long. Tomorrow would bring trials and more uncertainty. But for this moment, held in my brother's arms with the king's promise of freedom regardless of the outcome, I allowed myself to feel something I'd almost forgotten: hope. Dawn arrived with soft golden light filtering through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment upon waking, I forgot where I was, reaching instinctively for the familiar rough stones of my tower wall. Instead, my fingers met silken sheets, and the previous day's events crashed over me in a disorienting wave. My reunion with Sebastian had been cut short by preparations for the trials. He'd been reluctant to leave, promising to return, his eyes still disbelieving as he studied my face. "You look the same," he'd said wonderingly, "as if time stopped for you in that tower." I hadn't had the heart to tell him that in many ways, it had. A soft knock at the door preceded Agnes's entrance. She carried a simple breakfast tray and a bundle of white fabric. "The ceremonial attire," she explained, setting down the tray and unfolding what appeared to be a dress of undyed linen, unadorned except for silver embroidery at the neckline and hem, ancient symbols I didn't recognize. Traditionally worn by Omega initiates. I picked at the food, my stomach too knotted with anxiety to appreciate the fresh bread and fruit, luxuries compared to my tower meals. "Agnes, what exactly will happen today?" She sat beside me on the bed, her weathered hands smoothing the ceremonial dress. "The first trial tests the mind, your ability to sense and interpret emotions, to see truth beneath deception. The second challenges your spirit, your resilience and inner strength. The third..." She hesitated. "The third concerns the physical bond between true mates." My cheeks warmed. "You mean..." "Not what you're thinking." Agnes chuckled softly. "That comes only after a formal mating ceremony. This trial tests the spiritual and chemical compatibility, whether you and the king truly share the soul bond of legends. And if we don't?" Her expression grew serious. "Then either the king is not a true alpha, or you are not a true omega. Both possibilities would challenge the prophecy the council fears." After bathing in water scented with ritual herbs, I donned the white dress. It fit perfectly, flowing to my ankles with an elegant simplicity. Agnes wound my pale hair into a crown of braids, weaving in small white flowers. "Moon blossoms," she explained. "They bloom only at night, but retain their scent through dawn. They amplify an omega's natural abilities." Last, she placed the silver locket around my neck. "Keep this with you through all 3 trials," she instructed. "It's more than decoration." Captain Orloff arrived to escort me, his manner formal but kind. "The entire castle is buzzing with rumors," he said. As we walked through corridors I was still learning to navigate. "Many of the younger pack members are quite excited at the prospect of a true Omega's return. And the elders?" His mouth tightened. "Change is rarely welcomed by those who benefit from things remaining as they are." We descended stone steps into a part of the castle I hadn't yet seen. The air grew cooler, tinged with the scent of earth and ancient stone. Ornamented torches illuminated a circular chamber deep beneath the castle foundations. 13 stone chairs formed a ring around a central dais, where a silver bowl gleamed in the torchlight. The council members were already seated, their expressions ranging from skepticism to thinly veiled hostility. King Nathaniel stood as I entered, and something in his face, a flash of concern quickly masked, told me I looked more frightened than I'd hoped. "Lady Eleanor," he greeted me formally, though his eyes conveyed warmer sentiments he couldn't express before the council. "Are you prepared to undertake the trials of verification?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. Lady Victoria rose, assuming the role of ritual guide as the eldest female council member. "The trials date back to our earliest histories," she announced. "They have verified true Omegas throughout generations, though none in living memory." Her eyes flicked to me. "Step forward onto the dais, child." The stone was cold beneath my bare feet as I took my position beside the silver bowl. Inside, clear water reflected the torch flames. "The first trial tests the mind," Lady Victoria declared. "A true Omega possesses empathic abilities beyond ordinary perception. She can discern truth from falsehood, sense emotions others conceal, and identify pack bonds without being told of them. From her robes, she produced a vial of amber liquid. This elixir enhances natural abilities, bringing them to the surface. She poured 3 drops into the silver bowl, where they spread like golden tendrils through the water. "Drink," she instructed. I glanced at Nathaniel, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Taking the bowl in both hands, I drank the infused water. It tasted of honey and something sharper. Herbs I couldn't identify. Heat spread from my throat to my limbs, bringing heightened awareness of every person in the room. Lady Victoria gestured to the council members. 5 will speak. 1 statement from each. You must identify which statements are false. 5 council members stood. Lord Blackwell stepped forward first. "I welcome the news of a true Omega's discovery," he stated, his face impassive. The elixir seemed to sharpen my senses. Around Lord Blackwell, I could almost see a red haze of deception. The sensation was overwhelming but instinctively comprehensible. "False," I said with certainty. A murmur ran through the chamber. Lady Victoria nodded for the next council member to speak. Lord Mercer, a younger member, stepped forward. "I have a daughter who manifested as an Omega last spring. Around him, I saw nothing but clear blue truth." "True," I replied. 3 more statements followed. With each, I grew more confident in the strange new sense the elixir had awakened, the ability to perceive emotional auras surrounding each speaker. 5 correct discernments," Lady Victoria announced when the last had spoken. "The first trial is passed." She didn't sound pleased. Elder Thaddeus rose, his robes rustling in the silence. "The second trial tests the spirit. A true Omega must demonstrate inner strength that balances the external power of alphas." 2 guards brought forward a wooden chest. From it, Elder Thaddeus removed a crystal sphere that pulsed with faint inner light. "The soul stone," he explained, "reveals inner nature. All Omegas who touch it experience their deepest fears. Only a true Omega can face these visions without losing herself to them." Fear clutched at my throat. 10 years of isolation had given me ample time to develop fears. Of abandonment, of never being free, of dying alone in that tower. "Take the stone in both hands," Thaddeus instructed, "and do not release it until the vision ends, no matter what you experience." The stone was heavier than it appeared, warm against my palms. The moment I gripped it fully, the chamber around me dissolved. I stood in my tower room again, but something was wrong. The door had vanished, replaced by solid stone. The window had shrunk to a mere slit, allowing only the thinnest stream of light. Panic clawed at my chest as the walls seemed to inch closer. "No one is coming for you," whispered a voice from the shadows. "You've been forgotten." The locket burned against my skin, a counterpoint to the growing cold of the vision. I clutched it with one hand, keeping the other firmly on the stone. "This isn't real," I said aloud, my voice echoing strangely. "This is the trial." The scene shifted. I stood in a great hall filled with pack members, all turning away as I approached. At the far end, Nathaniel sat on his throne with another woman at his side, beautiful, confident. Everything I was not. "He never wanted you," the shadow voice taunted. "Who could want someone broken by years of isolation? You're damaged beyond repair." The locket pulsed warmer. I gripped it. focusing on its solid reality against the illusion surrounding me. I am not defined by my past, I declared, stronger now. I am not broken. The scene dissolved again, reforming into my worst fear. I stood before the council again as a 16-year-old girl, but this time, they decreed not isolation, but death. Too dangerous to live, Elder Thaddeus pronounced, and guards advanced with silver blades. My parents watched impassively. Sebastian turned away. Nathaniel was nowhere to be seen. The shadow voice laughed. This is your true fate. You were never meant to survive. The locket's heat intensified, almost burning my skin. A memory surfaced. Agnes's words. It guided her through dark times. Understanding dawned. The locket wasn't merely jewelry, but an anchor to reality, a talisman against the stone's illusions. I held it tightly and faced the advancing guards. I reject this vision. My life has purpose beyond your fears. The illusory world shattered like glass, and I found myself back in the chamber, gasping for breath. The crystal sphere still clutched in my hands. It had gone dark, its inner light extinguished. She has overcome the visions, Lady Victoria announced, sounding genuinely surprised. I looked up to find Nathaniel watching me with unmistakable pride, his hands gripped tightly on his chair arms, as if he had physically restrained himself from interfering. The second trial is past, Elder Thaddeus conceded reluctantly. We proceed to the third and final test. Lady Victoria approached with a ceremonial knife of polished silver. The trial of physical compatibility will determine if you are truly soul-bonded to our king. Nathaniel rose, removing his formal jacket to reveal a simple white shirt beneath. A male counterpart to my ceremonial dress, he joined me on the dais, his presence both comforting and overwhelming. Up close, his scent enveloped me, stronger now, as if the trials had heightened my perception of him as well. The blood ritual, Lady Victoria explained, reveals whether two wolves share the rare soul bond. If they do, their blood mingles without separation. If not, it remains distinct. She took Nathaniel's palm first, drawing the blade across it in a swift, shallow cut. He didn't flinch. Then she took my hand, her grip surprisingly gentle as she made an identical cut across my palm. Join hands, she instructed. Nathaniel's fingers interlaced with mine, his blood hot against the cut on my palm. Our eyes met as our hands pressed together, and a jolt of energy surged between us. Sharp, electric, undeniable. By the moon, someone gasped. I followed their shocked gazes to our joined hands, where a soft, golden light emanated from between our fingers. When Lady Victoria instructed us to separate our hands, a collective breath was held. On both our palms, the cuts had already begun healing, but more remarkably, a silvery mark had appeared on each, a crescent moon identical to the one on Agnes's locket. The soul bond is confirmed, Lady Victoria announced, her voice holding genuine awe. It hasn't manifested this strongly in written record. Elder Thaddeus's face had gone ashen. Other council members whispered urgently to one another. The significance of what had just occurred seemed to transcend even their political machinations. The trials are complete, Nathaniel declared, his voice ringing with authority. Lady Eleanor has proven herself a true Omega beyond any doubt, and the mate bond between us is confirmed by ancient right. Does any member of this council dispute these findings? Not even Elder Thaddeus dared speak against the evidence they had witnessed. Then, by the authority granted to me as king, I declare the following. Lady Eleanor will be recognized with all rights and privileges of her true nature. The practice of isolating Omegas for any reason is hereby abolished, and preparations for the royal mating ceremony will begin immediately. This last declaration startled me. Though I'd expected it as the logical conclusion of the trials, the reality of becoming queen, of being bound to this man I'd just met, struck me with sudden force. Nathaniel must have sensed my unease, for he added, "The ceremony will take place after a proper courtship period, as tradition dictates. Lady Eleanor has been denied choices long enough. This, at least, will be hers to make when she is ready." Relief flooded me, along with gratitude for his understanding. The mark on my palm tingled, a physical reminder of the connection the trials had confirmed. As the council session disbanded, Sebastian pushed through to embrace me. "You were magnificent," he whispered. "Mother and father are waiting above. They've been sick with regret since learning the truth from King Nathaniel yesterday. My parents. The thought of facing them after a decade of abandonment filled me with conflicting emotions. Did they know about what I truly was?" "No," Sebastian insisted. "They were told only that your scent was dangerous. Father tried to visit twice in the early years but was turned away. Eventually, they were told contact would only make your condition deteriorate." More lies from the council. I wasn't sure if the knowledge made their absence more bearable or more painful. As we climbed the stairs from the ritual chamber, Nathaniel fell into step beside me. "You did well," he said quietly. "Better than anyone expected. What happens now?" I asked, still reeling from the trials and their implications. He smiled, the first true smile I'd seen from him, transforming his severe features into something unexpectedly warm. "Now, Eleanor, you begin to live again. Starting with a proper meal and fresh air. I suspect you've had little enough of either for too long." After a brief, emotional reunion with my parents, my mother dissolving into tears, my father too overcome to speak at first, I found myself walking the castle gardens with Nathaniel. Spring flowers bloomed in carefully tended beds, their scents mingling with the earthy perfume of recently turned soil. "I've been dreaming of you," Nathaniel admitted as we paused beside a reflecting pool, even before I understood what the dreams meant. A woman with pale hair, standing in moonlight, calling me home from battle. I studied his profile, strong jaw, straight nose, the scar that somehow enhanced rather than diminished his beauty. I dreamed too, I confessed. Of freedom, mainly, of someone opening my door and leading me into sunlight. I glanced at him shyly. "I never saw a face, though. Disappointed now that you have?" His tone was light, but I sensed genuine vulnerability beneath. "No," I answered honestly. Overwhelmed. "Just yesterday I was a prisoner with no future. Today I'm supposedly destined to be queen." He touched the mark on his palm, matching the one on mine. Destiny can be a heavy word. Perhaps we might think of it differently. How so? "As possibility," he suggested. A door opening, not a path forced upon us. A butterfly drifted between us, its wings a vibrant blue against the garden greens. Freedom incarnate. For the first time since leaving my tower, I felt something like peace. "I think I could learn to see it that way," I said, and was rewarded with another of his rare, transformative smiles. 1 week passed like a dream after years of monotony. Each day brought new discoveries as I reacquainted myself with the castle and its inhabitants. Servants who had once feared me now smiled and bowed as I passed. Guards who wouldn't meet my eyes now stood at attention, offering respectful greetings. The difference was dizzying. My parents had taken rooms in the castle's guest wing, eager to rebuild our relationship after years of separation. The conversations were often awkward, filled with their guilt and my uncertainty, but each meeting grew easier than the last. My father, once a proud alpha who bowed to the council's decree regarding his own daughter, now seemed diminished by shame. "We believed them," he repeated during one painful discussion, his hands trembling around a teacup. "When they said your condition would worsen with contact, that you might even harm yourself if reminded of what you'd lost, we thought isolation was merciful." My mother, an Omega like myself, though not of the rare true bloodline, could barely speak of those years without tears. "I brought flowers to the tower base every full moon," she confessed. "I didn't know if anyone told you they were there, but I needed to do something." Agnes confirmed later that she had indeed gathered those monthly bouquets and brought them to my room, though she'd never revealed their source, fearing it would only deepen my sense of abandonment. Sebastian proved my greatest comfort. Having grown from the child I remembered into a confident young alpha, he now served as one of King Nathaniel's trusted lieutenants, a position he'd earned through loyalty during the Northern campaign. Nathaniel recognized something in me that others didn't, he explained as we walked the battlements one evening, watching the sunset paint the kingdom in gold and crimson, much as he recognized what you truly were, even from a distance. "You call him by his given name," I noted, surprised by the familiarity. Sebastian smiled. To his men who fought beside him, he's Nathaniel. Only in formal settings is he the king. He prefers it that way. What is he like? I asked, unable to keep the curiosity from my voice. As a man, not just a king or an alpha. My brother considered this fair. Demanding but never cruel, he fights at the front rather than commanding from safety. He glanced at me. And since returning from the north, he's been driven. Now I understand why. He was searching for you, even before he knew who you were. The mate bond between us remained a constant awareness, a gentle tug whenever Nathaniel was near. Despite the confirmation of our compatibility through the trials, he had kept his word about allowing me time. Our interactions remained formal in public, though his eyes often sought mine across rooms, conveying unspoken thoughts that made my pulse quicken. We had managed a few private conversations, walks in the garden, quiet moments in the library, where I discovered glimpses of the man behind the crown. He had a dry wit that surprised me, a deep knowledge of pack history that rivaled the elders, and when he spoke of his hopes for the kingdom, a passion that was impossible not to admire. On the 8th day after the trials, I woke to find a small wooden box outside my door with no note or explanation. Inside, nestled on velvet, lay a delicate silver bracelet set with moonstones. Not an official courting gift, which would have required formal presentation, but a personal token that made my heart flutter strangely. I wore it to breakfast, where Nathaniel's subtle smile when he noticed it around my wrist confirmed its source. Later that morning, Agnes found me in the library, where I'd been devouring books after years of limited reading material. Her expression was troubled. "The council has called an emergency session," she said without preamble. "Elder Thaddeus has been meeting with outlying pack leaders for days. I fear they're plotting something." Plotting what? I closed my book, anxiety immediately rising. Resistance to change. Agnes sat beside me, lowering her voice though we were alone. Many of the older pack leaders benefited from the council's control. They won't easily accept a shift in power, especially to a queen they see as untested and unknown. Should I tell Nathaniel? The thought of political machinations made my stomach clench. After years of isolation, the complexities of court politics remained baffling. "He's already aware," Agnes assured me. "But be cautious, child. Not everyone celebrating your return does so with honest hearts." Her warning remained with me throughout the day, casting shadows over interactions I might otherwise have enjoyed. At dinner that evening, a formal affair with visiting dignitaries, I found myself studying faces, wondering who might harbor hidden resentments beneath polite smiles. Nathaniel noticed my distraction when we shared a brief dance, required by protocol though limited in duration to prevent scandalous gossip before our official mating. "Something troubles you," he observed, his hand warm against my waist as he guided me through the steps I'd hastily relearned after years without practice. "Agnes mentioned council discontent," I admitted quietly, careful that nearby dancers wouldn't overhear. His expression hardened momentarily. "Thaddeus has been busy, yes, but he'll find less support than he hopes for." His fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on mine. "Trust that I won't let anyone threaten your position here. Never again." The fierce protection in his voice warmed something deep inside me. The mate bond responded, a pleasant hum beneath my skin where our hands connected. "I'm not afraid for myself," I realized aloud. "I'm afraid for what this means for you. For the kingdom." His eyes softened. "And that, Eleanor, is precisely why you were born to be Luna." The following morning brought news that confirmed Agnes's warnings. Sebastian arrived at my chambers, his expression grim. 3 northern border packs have declared they won't recognize any decree not approved by the full council, he reported. They're challenging Nathaniel's authority to make unilateral changes regarding Omega rights. "This is about me," I said, the weight of it settling heavily on my shoulders. "It's about power," Sebastian corrected. "You're just the convenient focus of their resistance. The Northern Pacts never fully accepted the peace terms. They're using this as pretext for rebellion." Nathaniel had called an emergency war council, and to my surprise, I received a formal summons to attend. When I arrived at the strategy room, conversation halted momentarily as heads turned to observe my entrance. Among the military advisors and senior pack leaders, I recognized few faces besides Sebastian's and Captain Orloff's. Nathaniel stood at the head of a map table, markers indicating pack territories across the kingdom. He nodded at my arrival, but didn't break from his discussion with a grizzled, older alpha I didn't recognize. I took the empty chair Sebastian indicated, uncomfortably aware of the assessing gazes from around the table. As the only female present and the youngest by decades, my presence clearly surprised the king's advisors. "For those who haven't had the honor," Nathaniel said, his voice cutting through the murmurs, "Lady Eleanor will be joining our strategic councils from now on. Her unique perspective will be valuable." "With respect, Your Majesty," said the grizzled alpha, "what strategic value can a sheltered Omega provide?" Before Nathaniel could respond, I found my voice. "Perhaps none yet, Lord? General Horvath," the man supplied, his tone marginally less dismissive when addressed directly. "General Horvath," I continued, forcing confidence into my words, "but I do bring one perspective no one else at this table possesses. I understand what it means to have one's freedom and rights stripped away by those claiming to act for the greater good. The Omegas in the Northern Territories may prove more valuable allies than you realize." A silence followed my statement. General Horvath's bushy eyebrows rose, and something like reluctant respect flickered in his eyes. Nathaniel's smile was subtle but unmistakable. "Precisely why your presence is required, Lady Eleanor." He turned back to the map. "Now, the Northern Pack leaders will meet at Blackrock in 3 days' time. We have reason to believe they plan to formalize their resistance and potentially select a challenger to my rule." "A direct challenge?" Sebastian asked, leaning forward. "They wouldn't dare." "They might, with sufficient backing," Nathaniel replied grimly. "Our intelligence suggests outside involvement, perhaps even from beyond our borders." The meeting continued with discussions of troop movements and defensive preparations that I struggled to follow. Yet when opinions were solicited, Nathaniel consistently included me, weighing my halting suggestions with the same seriousness he gave his experienced generals. As the council adjourned, he asked me to remain behind. When we were alone, his formal demeanor relaxed visibly. "You handled that well," he said, coming to stand beside me at the map table. "Horvath is a traditionalist, but he respects directness." "I felt like an imposter," I admitted. "What do I know of strategy or politics after years in a tower room?" "More than you realize." He studied me thoughtfully. "You survived a decade of isolation without losing your mind or spirit. That requires a kind of strength few possess." His faith in me was both flattering and terrifying. "What happens now? With the Northern Packs, I mean." His expression darkened. "Ideally, we resolve this without bloodshed. I've spent enough years at war." He traced a territory on the map, his finger following the border where the rebellious packs were located. "But I won't allow them to threaten what we're building here." "What exactly are we building?" I asked softly. His eyes met mine, intense and unwavering. "A kingdom where no one is imprisoned for being what they were born to be. Where power serves all, not just those who hold it." His hand moved unconsciously to cover the mate mark on his palm. "Where balance is restored." The conviction in his voice stirred something in me, a sense of purpose larger than my own freedom, my own happiness. "I want to help," I said with sudden certainty. "You already are." He reached out, his fingers brushing mine briefly before he caught himself, remembering the propriety required before our official mating. "Your very existence challenges the old order." The intensity of the moment was broken by a sharp knock. Sebastian entered without waiting for permission, his face taut with urgency. "Riders from the east," he reported. "Lady Victoria's caravan was attacked on her return journey from the regional gathering. She's requesting sanctuary and protection." Nathaniel straightened, king once more. "Prepare rooms for her and her people. Double the guard on the eastern approaches. And find Agnes. Lady Victoria will need her healing skills if she's been injured." Lady Victoria had been the only council member to treat me with something approaching fairness during the trials. Despite her initial skepticism, she had acknowledged the truth revealed by the ancient rites without hesitation. If she was now under attack for that honesty, the situation was deteriorating faster than anyone had anticipated. The castle transformed into a hive of activity as Lady Victoria's party arrived, bloodied, exhausted, and significantly reduced from the escort she'd departed with. The elderly councilwoman herself had sustained a wound to her shoulder, though she waved away assistance with remarkable stubbornness as she was helped from her carriage. "Assassins," she reported grimly, when Nathaniel met her in the castle's inner courtyard. "Disguised as ordinary travelers. They knew our route too well for coincidence." "Thaddeus," Nathaniel growled, though he kept his voice low. Lady Victoria's sharp eyes found me standing behind the king. "They wanted information about you, girl. About the trials. When I refused." She gestured to her bloodied clothing. A chill ran through me. This was no longer political maneuvering but open violence, and my existence was the catalyst. As Agnes led Lady Victoria away for treatment, Nathaniel turned to Sebastian and Orloff. "Increase castle security immediately. No one enters or leaves without my direct approval." The gravity of the situation struck me fully, only when Nathaniel assigned 2 personal guards to remain outside my chambers at all times. "A precaution only," he assured me, though his tense expression belied the casual words. That night, sleep proved elusive. I paced my rooms, feeling once again like a prisoner, though for very different reasons. The irony wasn't lost on me, freed from one tower only to find myself confined to a more luxurious one. A soft tap at my balcony door startled me. Heart pounding, I approached cautiously, relaxing only when I recognized Nathaniel's silhouette through the glass. I opened the door to find him standing there, informal in a simple shirt and trousers, looking more like the warrior he'd been than the king he was. "Forgive the unconventional visit," he said quietly. "I needed to see you, and 20 sets of eyes monitor the hallways." "Is something wrong?" I asked, suddenly fearful of more bad news. "Everything." He sighed, running a hand through his hair in a rare gesture of frustration. "And nothing that won't keep until morning." His eyes met mine. "May I come in?" "Just to talk." I stepped aside to allow him entry, acutely aware that being alone with him in my chambers after nightfall broke every rule of the courtship period we were supposedly observing. Yet it felt right, necessary even, in a way that transcended protocol. I closed the balcony door behind him, suddenly conscious of my nightgown and wrapper. Though modest by any standard, they were still more intimate attire than he had seen me in before. Nathaniel kept a respectful distance, moving to stand by the fireplace where embers still glowed softly. "The situation is deteriorating faster than I anticipated," he said, staring into the dying fire. "Lady Victoria's attack was meant to send a message, and to gather information about you, about the nature of our bond." "Why would that matter to them so much?" I asked, wrapping my arms around myself. He looked up, his expression grave. "Because a true bonded pair, a true alpha and true omega, has capabilities that threaten their control, abilities that have passed into legend, but were once the foundation of our leadership." "What abilities?" I moved closer, drawn by the intensity in his voice. "Pack connection beyond normal bonds, enhanced healing, and according to the oldest texts, the ability to command absolute loyalty, not through dominance as ordinary alphas do, but through a deeper, instinctive recognition of natural authority." He shook his head. "The Council has worked for generations to breed these traits out of our bloodlines, to dilute what they couldn't control." The revelation sent shivers through me. "And now, they fear what will happen if we fully bond." "Yes." His eyes held mine. "The morning after our mating ceremony, their power begins to crumble. They know this. The implications settled heavily between us. So they'll try to prevent it, by any means necessary." He nodded grimly. "Which is why I've made a decision. It's not ideal, and you may refuse if you wish, but I believe it's our best option." "What decision?" Wariness crept into my voice. "We move the mating ceremony forward, to tomorrow night." My breath caught. Though the bond between us grew stronger daily, the formal courtship period was supposed to last at least a month. The mating ceremony itself was sacred, meant to be witnessed by the entire pack with elaborate rituals and preparations. "That's very soon," I managed, my heart racing. "I know," he said softly. "And under any other circumstances, I would give you all the time you need. You deserve the full courtship, the celebration, everything tradition demands." His jaw tightened. "But I fear we don't have that luxury." I sank into a chair, processing his words. You believe they'll act against us before then. I know they will. Our intelligence confirms Thaddeus has called for a formal challenge to my rule at the new moon, 3 days from now. His voice lowered. They've found a puppet alpha from the Northern Territories willing to claim the throne through combat challenge. Horror washed through me. You would have to fight? And win, he confirmed. Which I would, but at the cost of more bloodshed and deeper division. If we complete the bond before then, their challenge becomes moot. Pack law recognizes a mated true pair as unassailable. The rational strategy was clear, yet the woman in me, the one who had dreamed of freedom and perhaps even love after years of isolation, felt the loss of what should have been. Nathaniel must have read my expression, for he knelt before my chair, careful still not to touch me without permission. I'm sorry, Eleanor. This isn't how I wanted this for you. For us, if there were any other way. I studied his face in the firelight. The strong angles, the scar that spoke of battles fought, the eyes that had never lied to me. In the week since my liberation, I had come to respect him deeply. The attraction between us was undeniable, growing stronger with each meeting. But mating was permanent, sacred, meant to be entered with certainty. If we do this, I said carefully, I need to know something first. Anything. He replied without hesitation. Is this only about political necessity and the prophecy, or is there something more between us? The vulnerability in my question made me wince inwardly, but I needed to know. His expression softened. Eleanor, he said, my name almost a caress on his lips. I have waited for you my entire life without knowing who I was waiting for. When I first caught your scent on the battlefield, it nearly brought me to my knees, not because of prophecy or politics, but because something in me recognized its other half. He held out his palm, the mate mark silvery in the dim light. This only confirmed what I already knew. And what was that? I whispered. That I was made to love you, he said simply. That whatever forces shape our world brought me back from war to find you. That I would have torn down that tower stone by stone with my bare hands had I known you were inside. His words resonated through me, vibrating along the bond between us. There was no deception in them. I could feel the truth as surely as I had sensed the lies during the first trial. Tomorrow, then, I said, making my decision. But not in secret or in haste. If we must accelerate the ceremony, let it still honor what this means. Relief washed over his features. Anything you wish. Agnes will help with the preparations. He rose, maintaining the distance propriety demanded for one more day. Get some rest. Tomorrow will change everything. After he departed as he had come, silently over the balcony, I found that sleep still eluded me, not from fear now, but from a strange, bubbling anticipation that I scarcely recognized as happiness. Dawn arrived with a flurry of activity. Agnes entered bearing not breakfast, but a team of servants carrying bolts of fabric, flowers, and mysterious bundles. We have much to do and little time, she announced, her efficiency belying her age as she directed the transformation of my chambers into a bridal preparation room. The traditional mating ceremony was adapted to our compressed timeline, but lost none of its solemnity. Word spread quickly through the castle, and despite the secrecy surrounding the reasons for haste, an atmosphere of celebration took hold. My parents arrived, my mother weeping joyful tears as she helped Agnes prepare the ritual bath scented with herbs and flower petals. My father presented me with a family heirloom, a silver circlet set with moonstones that had belonged to my grandmother. She would have wanted you to have it, he said gruffly, emotion making his voice rough. She always said you were special, even before... He trailed off, old guilt surfacing. I took his hand, finding forgiveness easier now that my future stretched bright before me. Thank you for being here today. Sebastian brought news throughout the day, of preparations in the Great Hall, of Nathaniel's calm determination, of Lady Victoria's surprising involvement in ensuring all proper rituals would be observed despite the accelerated timeline. She's become your unexpected champion, my brother reported with a grin. Told Elder Thaddeus to his face that he was on the wrong side of history. As twilight approached, I was dressed in the traditional mating gown. silver-white silk that flowed like water, embroidered with ancient symbols of fertility and strength. Agnes wove moon blossoms into my hair, now falling in loose waves down my back. "Something old," she said, touching the locket around my neck. "Something new," she continued, gesturing to the gown. "Something borrowed," she added, fastening a delicate silver chain around my ankle. "A fertility blessing from Lady Victoria herself. And something blue." This last was a small sapphire pin in the shape of a crescent moon, affixed to my bodice over my heart. When I looked in the mirror, a stranger gazed back, not the prisoner from the tower, nor even the uncertain girl who had faced the trials. A woman stood in my place, her eyes bright with purpose, her bearing regal despite her nervousness. "You look like your grandmother," my mother whispered. She was the last in our family to show the old blood traits, though no one recognized them for what they were at the time. At moonrise, Sebastian came to escort me to the great hall. The entire castle had been transformed in the space of a day. Garlands of flowers and greenery draped across stone walls, hundreds of candles casting golden light, members of the court in their finest attire lining the path I would walk. He offered his arm, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Ready to become queen, little sister?" I took a steadying breath. Ready to become myself. The great hall fell silent as the doors opened. At the far end, Nathaniel waited on the dais, magnificent in formal attire of midnight blue and silver. Our eyes met across the distance, and the bond between us pulsed with recognition and longing. Each step down the center aisle felt like coming home after a long journey. The faces around me, some friendly, some wary, some openly hostile, mattered less than the man waiting at the end of my path. The politics that had necessitated this hasty ceremony faded before the rightness I felt with each step closer to him. Lady Victoria presided over the ancient ritual, her wounded arm in a sling, but her voice strong as she recited the words unchanged for 1,000 years. When Nathaniel took my hands in his, the mate marks on our palms aligned, sending a visible ripple of silver light between us that drew gasps from the assembled witnesses. "Bond of body," Lady Victoria intoned, binding our hands with a silver cord. "Bond of mind," she continued, anointing our foreheads with sacred oil. "Bond of spirit," she concluded, placing a chalice of ritual wine to our lips. When Nathaniel lowered his mouth to mine in the ceremonial kiss, the world around us seemed to fade. The bond between us flared to full life. No longer a gentle tug, but a completed circuit, energy flowing between us in a connection I felt to my very bones. We turned to face the court, as Lady Victoria proclaimed, "I present to you King Nathaniel and Queen Eleanor, true mates by ancient right, rulers of the United Pax." The cheers that erupted were deafening, drowning out the few dissenters. As we processed back down the aisle, I caught sight of Elder Thaddeus's face, pale with fury, and something that might have been fear. The celebration continued late into the night, though Nathaniel and I slipped away after the formal dances, as tradition allowed. The king's chambers, now our chambers, were a revelation of comfort and masculine elegance, yet I barely noticed the surroundings. My attention fixed on the man who was now my maiden name as well as destiny, alone together at last. The formal masks we'd worn before the court fell away. Nathaniel approached slowly, giving me time to adjust to this new reality. "You were magnificent today," he said, reaching out to touch my cheek with gentle fingers. "Every person in that hall saw what I've known since I first found you. You were born to be queen." I leaned into his touch, marveling at the rightness of it. I'm still learning what that means. "We both are," he admitted with a smile. "This bond between us, it's already stronger than I expected." I could feel it too, a heightened awareness of his emotions, a sense of his thoughts brushing against mine. "Is this what the council feared, this connection between us? This is only the beginning," he said, drawing me closer. "The texts speak of abilities that develop over time as the bond matures. But tonight is for us alone," I finished for him, suddenly shy despite the certainty I felt. His kiss was tender, unhurried despite the urgency that had brought us to this moment. As the night deepened around us, I discovered that some knowledge requires no teaching, the instincts of mates as old as our kind itself. Dawn found us tangled together. The bond between us strengthened in ways both physical and mystical. I traced the line of his jaw as he slept, marveling at the turn my life had taken, from prisoner to queen in the span of weeks. Yet it felt like coming full circle, returning to a destiny long delayed. A soft knock interrupted my reflections. Nathaniel woke instantly, alert in the way of warriors. "Enter," he called, ensuring I was properly covered before the door opened. Sebastian's face appeared, apologetic, but urgent. "Forgive me, but you're needed immediately. Riders from the northern border bring news." Nathaniel rose, pulling on a robe. "What news?" Sebastian's grim expression softened as his eyes met mine. "The northern pack leaders have withdrawn their challenge. 3 of the rebel alphas arrived an hour ago, requesting formal audience." A smile broke across his face. "They're asking to pledge loyalty directly to the true pair." Thaddeus's plan had failed. The ancient recognition of true mates had overcome political machinations, just as the prophecy had foretold. Later that morning, I stood beside Nathaniel as the northern alphas knelt before us, their submission not to conquest, but to something deeper, a recognition of natural order restored. "The moon has found her wolf," the eldest among them said, echoing the children's song Agnes had hummed during my bath a lifetime ago. "And the pack shall follow where they lead." As spring progressed into summer, more changes came. The tower where I had been imprisoned was dismantled stone by stone on Nathaniel's orders, the materials repurposed for a new Omega sanctuary, a place of learning and healing rather than confinement. Elder Thaddeus and his closest allies eventually fled the kingdom, rather than face judgment for their crimes, their power broken by the growing strength of our bonded rule. Each night, as Nathaniel and I retreated to our chambers, the bond between us deepened. I could feel his presence even when we were physically separated, sense his emotions, share thoughts without words. The abilities the ancient texts had described emerged gradually: healing touch, dream sharing, the capacity to calm even the most volatile alpha rage with a simple command. 1 year after my release from the tower, I stood on the castle battlements, watching the equinox festival below. The same celebration I had observed for a decade from my prison now unfolded with me as its queen. Nathaniel's arms encircled me from behind, his hand resting protectively over the slight swell of my abdomen where our child grew, the first offspring of a true pair in generations. "Remembering?" he asked softly, his chin resting on my head. "Yes," I admitted, but not with sadness anymore. I turned in his embrace to face him. "That tower made me who I am. Without it, I might never have developed the strength needed for this life." "You always had that strength," he countered, pressing his lips to my forehead. The tower merely proved it. Below us, the festival reached its peak as couples participated in the choosing ceremony, now transformed to ensure true compatibility rather than political advantage. No Omega would ever again be imprisoned for their nature. No Alpha would be manipulated into denying their true mate. I placed my palm against Nathaniel's, our matching mate marks glowing softly in the twilight. What had begun with fear and isolation had transformed into something I'd never dared dream possible during those lonely tower years. Not just freedom, but purpose. Not just acceptance, but love. "Come," Nathaniel said, taking my hand. "Our people are waiting." Together we descended to join the celebration. No longer the rejected Omega and the warrior king, but something new created from our union. Balance restored, as the oldest prophecies had promised. The moon had indeed found her wolf, and together we had found our way home.